This is a tutorial on the new lease listing agreement, CAR Form LL revised 1225. This is the version we're using going into 2026. This bundle is about 14 pages long. There's a booby trap in here, so I'll show you what to look out for and how to avoid the booby trap. And I'll explain how to fill this out simply. Now, I just added all the sample information for the sake of the tutorial. And I must say, this form is quite disappointing because, as I've said in many other videos, C.A.R has abandoned any sense of simplicity as they do all these revisions year after year. And this form is just unnecessarily cumbersome. It really could be a lot more simple, which is highly annoying, but have no fear, I'll show you how to fill this form out quickly and easily. We start by putting the date that we prepare the form here, the name of the landlord, which they call rental property owner or RPO or housing provider or landlord. They seem to like to juggle all those different titles across their forms, but at the end of the day, it's just the property owner. Then we put the name of our brokerage since we're listing it, the beginning and ending date of the listing period. If we leave one or both of these dates blank, this form can be null and void. So make sure you have both the beginning and ending date. And then, of course, put the premises, the property that we're putting for lease. Now, this is the asking amount. These are the terms that we're going to put on the MLS or market the property. So it's a starting amount, could possibly not be the final figure if there's a reduction in the future. But for now, we're just starting with $5,000. So we write in the numerical value here, and it'll automatically create a text value. We need to write in per month. And just go to your client if you need to for direction. Say, hey, what do you want to rent this out for? And what do you want the security deposit to be? Now, there is this form that talks about the allowable amounts for security deposit because there are limitations depending on if the property is furnished or unfurnished, and it's worth looking it up. By the way, side note, leases are a major pain in the neck for very little money. So make sure you charge, because sometimes agents do these out of accommodations for a purchase or sale client, and they do it for free. Don't ever do that, because these things are a total pain in the neck. And you know what agents always tell me when they're wrapping up their paperwork on a lease? They always say, my gosh, that was a lot of work. My gosh, that was terrible. And I say, yep, it's a lot of work for very little money. All right, just letting you know. And why am I telling you this? So you charge for your services. So you're not doing something, a lot of work and headache for free, thinking that this is, oh, it's an easy lease. It's not. They're very regulated now. They're a huge pain in the neck. Type of tenancy, check all that apply. Check both of these boxes. Check month to month and 1 year. Why? Well, things change over the course of marketing a property. Check both. Items included, or personal property that will not be maintained or replaced by, or items excluded. You know, do you have to fill these out on here? No, you don't have to, but these are good conversation pieces. Why? Because you may need to add something in the MLS, like the owner's leaving personal property, or the owner is going to not take care of this or keep their car stored in one of the garages. I mean, whatever sort of unique arrangement could take place, your client needs to tell you so you can market it properly. And also, when the time comes and there's a tenant, put it in the lease agreement. So it's good. These are good conversation starters here, just to ask, okay? Compensation, the important part. Now remember, there's no mention anywhere in this form about the tenant's agent's compensation. Whatever the person representing the tenant, even if it's you, even if you are a dual agent, there is nothing in the listing agreement that talks about compensating the tenant's agent, period. Just remember that. That's an absolute. We're talking about compensation to the listing broker exclusively. Now, for a fixed term lease, you go in and you can just write an amount. Now, I get asked all the time, well, how much should I charge? You know, often I see, and you'll have to get your calculator out for this one, agents will put an amount similar to what you see on a sales transaction, like 2.5% of the total payments of the rental agreement. And you need to figure that out with your calculator because, so let's say it's $5,000 a month for 1 year. $5,000 times 12 months, $60,000 times 0.025. Is that how much money you're willing to work for? That's why you need a calculator. You got to figure out it's a certain amount that you're willing to work for. If not, check this box and write in a flat fee, $1,000, $2,000, $3,000, whatever it is. Write that in here instead. If you run a calculation and this percentage is kind of on the small side and it's like $300, why even bother? I mean, it's insanity to be a lease agent for some paltry sum like that. Write in a figure here, $1,500, $2,000, $2,500. Write that in instead. It doesn't matter if the lease is $1,000 a month. It does not matter if it's a cheap little studio or something. Your time is valuable and it's still a lot of work and headache for you. I promise you, you need to protect yourself by putting in reasonable compensation. Now, this is just for fixed term leases. There's also a month-to-month section. Fill out both just in case. You can put a percentage here or a flat fee. Just like you would here, percentage and flat fee, do the same here. Do the same. Cover both bases. And then it goes on, and so read this if you want. I'm going to skip through for the sake of time. Protect yourself with a continuation period of 90 days. Write in 90 days so that if this agreement expires and work that you did turns into some sort of transaction, you get paid on it. So put in 90 days, at least 30, but the more the better. Put in 180 days if you want, okay? And if you have questions about anything here, leave a comment. I'll be happy to answer. Owner's going to initial and you move on. Now, what if the tenant ends up purchasing the property? Oh, let me back up 1 second. Additional compensation. I think we covered it pretty well up above, but if you need to add something else, go ahead and write it in here. And now, compensation if there's a sale to the tenant. What if the tenant buys the property? Well, check this box and write in a number here. If the owner pushes back on this, fine, you can take it out, but I highly recommend checking this box and writing in what you would charge on a sales transaction right there. Now, there's this section here, and this is what I call the misfit buyer section on the listing agreement for sales transactions. And that is additional compensation if the tenant doesn't have an agent, but you end up doing all the paperwork. Now, let me be clear. This is not dual agency. If you check this box and you write in a figure here, and then you act as a dual agent, you are not eligible for this at all. You are not eligible for any compensation here. Why? Because this is for unrepresented tenants. And if you add yourself as a dual agent, then now you have a represented tenant. So this doesn't apply to you. This only applies if the tenant is unrepresented and you want to add on a bonus for yourself to hold their hand because they're going to be more work. Now, this isn't used very often. Why? Because usually whatever's being charged here, they already factor it in. But the proper way to do it, and if you want to protect yourself and say, it's likely that there will be an unrepresented tenant and I want to get paid more if that's the case, by all means, write in a percentage or write in a flat fee. But whatever you do, do not put yourself as the tenant's representative on any of the paperwork if you do this section. Does that make sense? If not, leave a comment. This right here is if the property owner was in a listing relationship with a former broker and there's a continuation period or something, you'll fill it out here. Maybe the owner says, hey, I had it listed with someone else. They had a tenant come through. If that tenant comes back, they need to get paid on it. That's really their deal. You can document that here. If not, just skip it. And now there's this referral fee section. If this client of yours, this lease listing client was referred to you, check this box. Should you do the RAD form? I say no. I have a whole separate video on why I do not do the RAD form. But you should disclose if you're paying out a referral fee. That's a whole separate topic. I have a whole other video on it. And it's unusual that you're getting a referral lease listing client. Gosh, would you even want that referral? If someone called me up and said, hey, do you want this lease listing referral? I mean, unless it's like a $50,000 a month insane, home that's going to pay well, there's no way I'm taking it. All right, tenant payments. See, why do they need to put this in here? Why whoever drafts these forms really needs to think of how to make it simple as possible. Do you absolutely need this? Is this a necessity? No, it's not. This is all going to get figured out on the lease agreement. If you want to fill this out, by all means, be my guest. Do you need to? No. All right. This is just just thinking ahead. It's making more work, which I don't like. I like least viable, compliant way to do stuff. And this too. I mean, it's like, gosh, really? Guys, all this gets hashed out in the lease agreement itself. This will all get hashed out later. C.A.R has this naughty habit of adding stuff that gets negotiated in the purchase agreement or the lease agreement in the listing agreements. It's highly, highly annoying. Okay, key safe, lockbox. Are you putting a lockbox on a property? Check this box. Honestly, I think by default, this should be checked, but I don't make the rules here. So you check this box, and it's going to add in a whole nother form. Yes, that's why these things just get so long and obnoxious. Sign. Are you going to put a sign up? Check this box if you are. Then we skip on. Down here. Disclosures, advisory, boilerplate text. Stuff that's good to know. We keep mediation. That's good. We come down to additional terms. Anything else we need to add here? So there's auxiliary space, which is nice. This is an endangered species on C.A.R forms. They're just getting rid of any of this auxiliary space in case we dare actually add something to one of these forms. If you need it, it's there. We don't need it. I'm just showing you how I would fill this form out if I were in the position of filling one out. Okay, we're coming toward this. Now, if it's an entity, let's say it's an LLC, you check this box, you write in the name of the entity, you write in the authorized signer as an individual, Jane Doe. Jane is whoever she's authorized to sign on the LLC, so you'd put her name here and then she'd sign. For everyone else, you just put it down here, rental property owner. And we're basically done with the lease listing itself, broker signature down here, that whole section. Page 5 of 5. So of the 14 pages of this bundle, 5 is allocated to the lease listing agreement. Isn't that sad? Isn't it sad that they give us a 14-page bundle on a 5-page? And by the way, this lease listing agreement shouldn't be more than 3 or 4 pages at the absolute most. Here is the booby trap I told you about. Rental property owner disclosure. This is like a TDS form for leases where the property owner discloses what they know about the property, which is fine because the more you disclose, the less likely you're going to get blamed for something or for withholding, concealing, misrepresenting material facts. So it's good to disclose. Here's a problem though. This is on the lease listing agreement. And guess what? The tenant needs to sign this. And it's all attached and bundled together. And the problem is that I see agents, first off, agents often skip this, which you shouldn't. You should, or you know what you should do? Here's a suggestion. Skip it and then do this form as a standalone. Skip it and come back. Why am I suggesting that? Well, because the problem is that if you fill this out as part of the lease listing bundle, you're going to have the tenant sign this bundle. And the problem is that a lease listing agent doesn't want to show all this, the private lease listing agreement with the tenant. But the tenant has to sign this. Because if you have this filled out and you don't have the tenant sign it, now you're concealing material facts and you can get in big, big trouble. This is the booby trap they set you up with, people. So if you have this filled out as part of this bundle, you need to have this signed by the tenant. And the tenant's going to see everything. They're going to see the whole 14-page bundle. So if you want, skip past here. This is what I would do. I wouldn't fill this out now. And I would just do it as a standalone form. I'd go back into the C.A.R form library of 10,000 forms they have now. I'd find rental property owner disclosure, what do they call this? RPOD. I'd pull this up separately. I'd fill it out with my client. And then that way I could send this as a standalone form and then without having to show my private lease listing with the tenant. Now here's an advisory, RPOA, 3 pages. I'm sure it's all good stuff. Okay, and the property owner signs. Okay, fair housing discrimination. We get it. All right, it goes on. Client signs, California Consumer Privacy Act advisory. I mean, it's all good stuff, right? All good advisories. Just to bury your client in paperwork. Okay, now it adds on. Remember how we checked that box before for that key safe, that lockbox? Well, it adds this on. Oh my gosh. Is this really necessary? Well, it automatically populates this form, so we're going to fill it out. I mean, it's simple enough. And then the owner is going to sign off on it. This gives the tenant, or excuse me, the agent authorization to have a lockbox up, and all the ways that it can go wrong by having a lockbox. And the owner is going to sign. The tenant, if it's occupied by a tenant, is going to need to sign off on this as well. That's what this is all about. Because there are so many rules with tenancy now that there's many ways this can go wrong, where you have a lockbox giving access to a tenant that has rights to not have their privacy invaded. So this form's kind of like a necessary evil, unfortunately. If you check that lockbox, if the lockbox box that we checked in the agreement itself, if it's checked, it's going to populate this form. Just fill it out. It's simple enough. We're done. 14 pages. Okay. If you have any questions, please leave a comment, and I hope you found this helpful. Thank you for watching.